I should have walked away the moment I saw the second phone. But instead, I closed the emergency kit, zipped it slowly, and decided I would let the wedding happen. 2 days before our wedding, my fiancée, Lila, asked me to grab her emergency kit from the hall closet. It was late evening. The kind of quiet that settles into an apartment when both people are exhausted from planning a wedding. Our living room still smelled faintly of eucalyptus from the floral samples her sister had dropped off earlier. Seating charts covered the coffee table. My phone buzzed every few minutes with messages from relatives flying in. 500 guests. That was the number Lila kept repeating all week, half proud, half overwhelmed. "Can you check if my migraine pills are still in there?" she called from the bedroom. "I think I left them in the kit." "Sure," I said. The emergency kit was a black canvas bag stuffed with everything a bride might panic about: safety pins, breath mints, tissues, painkillers, hairspray, sewing needles. Lila had assembled it herself weeks ago, laughing about how brides on TikTok swore it saved their lives. I unzipped the bag and started digging. Lip balm, Band-Aids, a small sewing kit. Then my hand touched something cold and rectangular. At first, I thought it was just a power bank. But when I pulled it out, it was a phone. Not her phone. A second phone. It was thin, matte black, the kind of cheap prepaid device you buy at a convenience store. No case. No stickers. No scratches that suggested long use. Just clean, quiet, and powered on. For a few seconds, I just stared at it. "Find the pills." Lila called again. My throat felt strangely tight. "Yeah," I answered, even though I hadn't. "Still looking." I turned the phone over in my hand. Locked screen. No notifications. But the battery indicator glowed a soft green. Something about the way it was hidden under everything else in the bag made my stomach twist. Because Lila and I didn't keep secrets. At least, that's what I had always believed. Lila and I had been together 4 years. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party. One of those crowded apartment gatherings where everyone pretends they're still 22 even though they're pushing 30. She was sitting on the kitchen counter, barefoot, eating cake straight from the box with a plastic fork. "Don't judge me," she said when she caught me watching. "I'm not," I laughed. "I'm impressed." That was Lila. Warm. Honest. Unfiltered. She had this way of looking at people like she was genuinely curious about them. Like every conversation mattered. By the end of the night, we were sitting on the balcony together, talking about everything from childhood memories to terrible jobs we'd had after college. And somewhere between the cheap wine and the city lights. I knew. Not in a dramatic movie way. Just a quiet certainty. Like finding the right key for a lock you didn't realize had been stuck. Over the years, our life together became simple and comfortable. Sunday grocery runs. Late-night takeout on the couch. Arguments about whether the thermostat should be 70 or 72. Normal things. Safe things. She worked in event planning, which explained the scale of the wedding she insisted on. "People remember weddings forever," she told me once, spreading fabric swatches across the dining table. "I want ours to feel unforgettable." And maybe that should have been my first warning. Because unforgettable doesn't always mean beautiful. One person had always been part of our relationship from the beginning. Marcus. Lila's best friend. I met him about 3 weeks after we started dating. He showed up to brunch wearing oversized sunglasses and hugging Lila like they hadn't seen each other in years. "This is the famous Ethan," he said, extending a hand toward me. Marcus was loud, dramatic, and strangely charming. The kind of guy who turned every story into a performance. But he was also openly gay. At least, that's how Lila introduced him. "My gay best friend," she would say affectionately, rolling her eyes whenever he teased her. They had known each other since college. Shared vacations. Inside jokes. Endless voice notes sent back and forth throughout the day. Sometimes it felt like Marcus knew what Lila was thinking before I did. But I never questioned it. Because trust, to me, wasn't something you measured. You either had it, or you didn't. And until that moment in the hallway closet, holding a phone that didn't belong to either of us, I had never doubted her. My thumb hovered over the screen. The phone didn't require Face ID. Just a simple passcode. 4 digits. I stared at the keypad. A strange silence filled the apartment, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and Lila humming faintly in the bedroom while she looked for something to wear tomorrow. 2 days before our wedding. 500 guests arriving. Families flying across the country. Everything already paid for. And in my hand, a secret I hadn't known existed. For a long moment, I considered putting the phone back, pretending I never saw it. But something deep in my chest told me the truth was already waiting. All I had to do was unlock it. My thumb hovered above the keypad longer than I'd like to admit. There's a strange moment before you uncover a truth, where part of you still believes life might return to normal if you just step away. I could have zipped the bag. I could have walked into the bedroom and handed Lila her migraine pills. But something about that hidden phone, buried under tissues and breath mints like it wasn't meant to exist, made my chest feel hollow. So I tried the first code that came to mind. Her birthday. Wrong. Then mine. Wrong again. I exhaled slowly and leaned against the closet wall. My mind wandered through dates that mattered to us. The day we met. Our anniversary. Nothing. The phone remained locked, silent, patient. Then a thought slipped into my mind, so small I almost ignored it. Marcus's birthday. I entered the numbers. The screen opened instantly. And just like that, something inside me quietly broke. The phone wasn't empty. Far from it. The home screen was almost blank except for 3 apps. Messages. Voice recorder. And a messaging app one recognized immediately. The one people used when they didn't want conversations saved to their main phone. My fingers felt numb as I tapped the messages. There was only one contact. Just one. Saved as M. I already knew who it was. But I opened it anyway. The thread stretched back months. Maybe longer. Photos. Voice notes. Late-night texts. I sat down on the hallway floor without realizing it. The first message I opened was from 3 nights earlier. Marcus, are you sure you can pull this off? I'm still nervous. Lila replied seconds later. Relax. Ethan trusts me completely. I read that line 3 times. Each time it felt heavier, like swallowing something sharp. My thumb scrolled further. Another message. Marcus, 2 more days and you'll be a married woman. That still sounds insane. Lila, it's just paperwork, baby. You know that. Baby. The word echoed inside my head like a dropped glass. My eyes moved faster now. Months of messages unfolded in front of me. Jokes. Plans. Photos I didn't want to see. And voice notes. Dozens of them. My chest tightened. I hesitated before tapping the first one. For a second, I considered stopping again. But that door had already opened. The voice note played quietly through the phone speaker. Marcus's voice came first, softer than the version he used around other people. God, I miss you. Then Lila laughed. Not the polite laugh she used at family dinners. This was the one I knew from late nights together. I literally saw you yesterday. Yeah, Marcus said. But yesterday you weren't sleeping next to him. The room felt suddenly colder. I hate when you say his name, Lila replied. It makes me feel like the worst person alive. You're not, Marcus said gently. You're just stuck in a situation. A long pause followed. Then she whispered something that made my stomach drop. I wish the wedding was already over. From the bedroom, I heard her footsteps moving around. Drawers opening. Music starting softly on her phone. Life continuing. Meanwhile, the version of my life I believed in was quietly collapsing in the hallway. I kept scrolling. Their conversations weren't just flirtation. They were intimate. Plans to meet when I was at work. Inside jokes about how easily they fooled people. And the thing that made it all worse. They talked about me like I was a kind but naive obstacle. Not cruelly. Not even with hatred. Almost with pity. Marcus once wrote, "He's a good guy, you know." Lila responded, "I know. That's the hardest part." I sat there staring at the screen for a long time. Long enough that the hallway light above me flickered once. Long enough that my hands stopped shaking. Because something unexpected was happening inside my mind. The initial shock slowly faded, and in its place came something quieter. Something colder. Clarity. "Hey, did you find them?" Lila called again. Her voice sounded normal. Warm. The same voice that used to tell me she loved me before falling asleep. I stood up slowly. Placed the phone back into the emergency kit exactly where I found it. Then I grabbed the bottle of migraine pills sitting right beside it. When I walked into the bedroom, she was sitting cross-legged on the bed surrounded by wedding magazines. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun. She smiled the moment she saw me. "There you are." I handed her the pills. "Found them." "Thank God," she sighed. "My head's been killing me." She swallowed one dry, then looked up at me with tired eyes. "You okay?" she asked. I realized I must have been staring. For a second, I wondered if she could somehow see the truth written across my face. But she didn't. Because she trusted me too. Trusted that I had no idea. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Just tired." She reached for my hand and squeezed it. "2 more days," she said with a soft smile. "Then we're married." 2 more days. 500 guests. A ceremony already rehearsed. And suddenly, a new idea began forming in my mind. Slow. Deliberate. Painfully calm. I wasn't going to cancel the wedding. Not yet. Because the truth deserved witnesses. And if Lila and Marcus had spent months hiding their reality, then maybe it was time for the world to hear it. At the exact moment the priest would ask a question everyone in that room expected to remain rhetorical. Speak now, or forever hold your peace. For the next 48 hours, I played the role of a man about to get married. And apparently, I was very convincing. I laughed with my groomsmen during the rehearsal dinner. I hugged relatives who had flown across the country. My mother cried twice just looking at the seating chart. Meanwhile, inside my chest, something had gone completely still. Not rage. Not panic. Just a quiet focus. I slept next to Lila those nights, listening to the rhythm of her breathing, wondering how long she had lived this double life beside me. Every so often, she would roll toward me in her sleep and rest her arm across my chest like she had done 1,000 times before. And every time, I felt a strange mix of grief and clarity. Because the woman I loved was real. But so was the one sending secret voice notes to Marcus. Both existed. And by Sunday afternoon, everyone would know. The morning of the wedding arrived with bright, cloudless skies. The venue was a restored vineyard estate about an hour outside the city, Lila's dream location. Long rows of white chairs stretched across the lawn. Flowers lined the aisle in soft shades of ivory and pale pink. 500 guests. Family. Friends. Colleagues. People who had watched our relationship grow for 4 years. The air smelled faintly of roses and freshly cut grass. I stood in a small preparation room with my best man, Daniel, adjusting my tie in the mirror. "You look like a guy about to faint," he said, half joking. I gave a small smile. "Just wedding nerves." He clapped my shoulder. "Normal. Normal." If only he knew. Earlier that morning, before leaving the apartment, I had quietly taken the second phone from Lila's emergency kit. She was in the shower when I did it. The water running loud enough to cover the zipper. I didn't read anything new. I didn't need to. Instead, I transferred several of the voice notes to my laptop. The ones that made the truth unmistakable. Clear. Undeniable. I also bought something else on the way to the venue. A small wireless adapter that connected directly to the venue's sound system. The same speakers that would play the ceremony music. The same speakers that would carry the priest's voice across the lawn. And at a certain moment, those speakers would carry something else. Guests began arriving around 4 in the afternoon. I watched them through the window of the groom's lounge. Laughter. Hugs. Champagne glasses clinking. Lila's parents greeting relatives. My father shaking hands with people he hadn't seen in years. Everything looked exactly like the wedding we had planned. Except now, it felt like a stage. and everyone was unknowingly part of the final act. The ceremony started at 5. Music floated across the lawn as the bridal party walked down the aisle one by one. Bridesmaids in soft green dresses. Groomsmen adjusting their jackets nervously. Marcus walked down the aisle near the front, wearing a fitted gray suit and a small white rose pinned to his lapel. Lila had insisted he be included in the ceremony. "He's family," she said months ago. I remember smiling back then. Now I simply watched him. He looked relaxed, comfortable, like a man attending a wedding, not secretly betraying it. For a moment, our eyes met across the lawn. He gave me a friendly nod. I nodded back. Then the music changed. The kind of soft piano melody that always makes people sit a little straighter. Everyone stood, and Lila appeared at the end of the aisle. She looked breathtaking. I won't pretend otherwise. The dress was simple but elegant, satin that caught the late afternoon light as she walked forward. Her father held her arm, proud and emotional. Guests smiled. Some wiped tears. And as she moved closer, our eyes locked. For a brief second, something inside me cracked again. Because the woman walking toward me was the same one I fell in love with on that balcony 4 years ago. The same laugh. The same eyes. The same warmth. And I wondered, not for the first time, whether she had ever truly loved me at all, or if I had simply been the safe choice. She reached the altar. Her father placed her hand in mine. "Take care of her," he whispered quietly. I swallowed. "I will." The priest began the ceremony. His voice calm, practiced, steady. Guests listened attentively as he spoke about commitment, trust, and partnership. Words that once meant everything to me. Now they sounded almost ironic. Minutes passed. Vows were exchanged. Lila spoke first. Her voice trembled slightly. "Ethan, from the moment we met, I knew you were someone special." The guests smiled softly. I watched her carefully. Every expression. Every pause. She sounded sincere, which somehow made the betrayal feel even heavier. Then it was my turn. I kept my vows short. Simple. Because the moment I was waiting for hadn't arrived yet. Finally, the priest closed his book gently and looked at the crowd. And there it was. The moment every wedding contains, but almost no one expects to matter. He cleared his throat. "If anyone present knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony." The air seemed to still. "Speak now, or forever hold your peace." For a heartbeat, the vineyard lawn was silent. Exactly as everyone expected. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and raised my hand. The priest blinked in confusion. So did everyone else. For a second, the entire vineyard seemed frozen. 500 people staring at me with polite curiosity, assuming I was about to make some sentimental joke. Lila gave a small nervous laugh beside me. "Ethan," she whispered. But I didn't look at her. My eyes were on Marcus. And the moment he realized that, something in his expression shifted. Not panic. Not yet. But the easy confidence drained from his face. The priest cleared his throat awkwardly. "Son," he said gently, leaning toward me, "this part of the ceremony is more of a tradition. If you have something to say, perhaps." "I do," I said calmly. My voice carried farther than I expected through the microphone. A ripple moved through the crowd. My mother leaned forward in her seat. Daniel stared at me from the front row, confused. Beside me, Lila squeezed my hand lightly. "Ethan, what are you doing?" she murmured under her breath. I turned to face the guests. For a moment, I just looked at them. People who loved us. People who believed they were here to celebrate something real. And maybe that's why I spoke as calmly as I did. "I think everyone here deserves the truth," I said. A quiet murmur spread across the chairs. Lila's grip on my hand tightened. "What truth?" she whispered. I finally looked at her. And in that moment, I saw the first real flicker of fear in her eyes. Not confusion. Recognition. Because somewhere deep down, she knew. "I found something 2 days ago," I continued. The vineyard was silent now. Even the breeze seemed to pause in the trees behind the ceremony arch. In Lila's emergency wedding kit. Her face went pale. Marcus shifted slightly in his chair. "I found a second phone," I said. The murmurs grew louder. Lila's voice came out tight and strained. "Ethan, please. Not here." I shook my head gently. 500 people came here today to celebrate honesty and commitment. I slipped my hand into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. "So I think honesty is exactly what they should hear." Lila's hand dropped from mine. Her breathing had changed, shallow and quick. "Ethan," she said more firmly. "Stop." But I had already tapped the screen. The small wireless adapter in my pocket connected instantly to the venue's sound system. A soft crackle echoed through the speakers around the lawn. Guests looked around, confused. And then, Marcus's voice filled the air. Clear. Undeniable. "God, I miss you." A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. Then Lila's voice followed. Her laugh. The same laugh she had used in our kitchen 1,000 times. "I literally saw you yesterday." Some guests exchanged puzzled glances. But when Marcus spoke again, the mood shifted. "Yeah," his voice said through the speakers. "But yesterday you weren't sleeping next to him." A collective intake of breath swept through the audience. Lila's head snapped toward me. "Turn it off," she whispered urgently. But the recording continued. "I hate when you say his name," her recorded voice replied. The real Lila stood beside me, frozen. "It makes me feel like the worst person alive." Marcus's recorded voice softened. "You're not. You're just stuck in a situation." Gasps erupted among the guests. Someone in the back said, "Oh my God!" I saw my father slowly lean back in his chair. Marcus stood up suddenly from the front row. "Ethan, stop this right now," he said sharply. But the final line played before I touched the screen. "I wish the wedding was already over." Silence followed. A heavy, suffocating silence. Then the recording ended. I lowered my phone slowly. No one spoke for several seconds. 500 people processing the same truth at the same time. The priest looked stunned. Lila's father stared at the ground. My mother had her hand over her mouth. And Marcus looked like someone had just removed the air from his lungs. "You recorded us," he said hoarsely. "I didn't have to," I replied quietly. "You recorded yourselves." Lila stepped closer to me, her voice shaking. "You humiliated me," she whispered. I looked at her for a long moment. And the strangest thing happened. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just sadness. "I gave you 4 years of my life," I said softly. Her eyes filled with tears. "You could have told me the truth." She opened her mouth to speak. But no words came out. Because there was nothing left to explain. The truth had already echoed across the vineyard. Guests began murmuring loudly now. Some stood up. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, pacing near the aisle. "You didn't have to do this," he said bitterly. I met his gaze calmly. "You're right." Then I gestured toward the crowd. "But neither did you." I turned back toward the priest. He still looked completely stunned. "I think that answers the question," I said quietly. The ceremony was over. But the consequences were only just beginning. The aftermath was surreal. Guests didn't know where to look first. Some whispered to each other, trying to process the moment. Others simply stared at Lila, her face pale, mascara streaked from the nerves she'd been trying to hide all morning. Marcus was pacing now near the back of the vineyard, muttering under his breath. My parents were silent, holding each other's hands tightly, as if bracing for what came next. And me. I stood there quietly, letting it all settle like dust in a sunbeam. My chest hurt, sure, but it wasn't the sharp pain of betrayal anymore. It was the dull ache of clarity, the kind that comes when you finally see the world for what it really is. Lila's mother approached her daughter first, shaking her head slowly. We need to talk," she said softly. But Lila couldn't meet her eyes. "Not yet." I walked toward the edge of the aisle, the sun warm on my back. Somewhere behind me, someone whispered, What does he plan to do now? Nothing immediate, I thought. Nothing dramatic. No shouting. No confrontations. The world had already seen the truth. That, in itself, was enough. Over the next hour, the wedding guests dispersed slowly. Some hugged me, offering condolences disguised as support. Others quietly left, clearly uncomfortable. I caught a few relatives staring at Lila, whispering behind hands, trying to understand how they had been deceived. I stayed by the venue's edge, watching the vineyard stretch out in golden late afternoon light. The air smelled faintly of roses and dry grass. Birds chirped as if nothing had happened, blissfully unaware of human heartbreak below. Marcus came toward me eventually. His hands were trembling. I could see the guilt written all over his face, the charm gone, the bravado gone, replaced with a raw, human vulnerability. "You could have ruined everything," he said, voice low. "Why didn't you just, I don't know, call the wedding off?" I shook my head slowly. Because some truths are bigger than a wedding. Bigger than anger. People needed to see this. Not just you two. He looked down at the ground, silent. "You were my friend," I said quietly. "Or at least, I thought you were." He didn't answer. Lila didn't talk to me that day. She didn't try to explain, apologize, or justify. She left the venue with her mother, carrying nothing but a small clutch. I didn't follow. I didn't call. I didn't even try to understand at that moment. I let her go. That night, I sat alone on the balcony of the hotel I had booked for the honeymoon, one I would now cancel. The air was cool, faintly smelling of the vineyard below and pine from the surrounding hills. My mind replayed every voice note I had heard, every lie hidden behind a laugh, every secret whispered at night while I thought she was beside me. And yet, I didn't feel broken. I felt free. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. Lila moved out. Marcus avoided my calls. Family members checked in intermittently, offering support without prying. I spent hours walking through familiar neighborhoods, the city still moving around me like it had always done, oblivious to the turmoil that had unfolded in my life. I began small routines again. Morning coffee, the smell of toast crisping in the pan. Evening walks while the sun dipped behind apartment buildings. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, sharing small laughs and stories that didn't feel heavy with betrayal. And slowly, the world regained its color. A few months later, I met someone new. Not a whirlwind romance. Not a distraction. Just someone quiet, kind, whose eyes held curiosity without secrets. We'd sit on benches in the park, sharing small observations about life, how leaves fell faster than expected, how the light caught the ripples on the river. I noticed, more than anything, that trust could exist again, carefully, delicately. Sometimes I think about Lila. Sometimes I wonder what Marcus thinks, or how they explain themselves to anyone who asks. But mostly, I try to focus on the lessons I learned. Honesty matters. Observation matters. And sometimes, the quietest revenge is simply letting the truth speak for itself. I still remember the sound of their voices spilling through the vineyard speakers, unplanned yet perfectly timed. That moment taught me something about life. You cannot control what others do, but you can control how you carry yourself afterward. And that, maybe, is the most powerful kind of freedom. So I ask you, quietly, gently, when faced with betrayal, what would you do? Confront it, ignore it, or let the truth reveal itself in its own time? Because sometimes, the most dignified path isn't the loudest. It's the one that leaves you whole. If this story touched you, or made you reflect on trust, honesty, or relationships, consider subscribing for more true, human stories told in the first-person perspective, the quiet, intimate confessions that remind us why human connections matter so much.